What's up, everybody? I'm David Hain. Welcome to episode 227 of the A to D From Addict to Disciple podcast. If you enjoy this podcast, please like, subscribe, follow, and share the link with your friends. If you'd like to get our curriculum, you can get the paperback or ebook of From Ashes to Destiny on Amazon. Today's episode, number 227, is entitled Kintsugi. Okay, so first let me start by talking about that word. Kintsugi, or another pronunciation you may have heard is Kintsugi, is a Japanese term, and it literally is an art form that repairs broken objects with gold or precious metals. And this topic came up because of reactions I got to episode 224 regarding beautiful scars. And most of the guys were basically saying, hey, I've got these scars and you're saying I need to make them beautiful, and that's a great idea, but it's easier said than done. So I found this Japanese art form where what they really do is they take broken pottery or glass or other similar materials, and they join them together with gold. They use the gold as the joinery. And the word kintsugi comes from Japanese word kin, which means gold, and sugi, which means join. So literally, kintsugi means golden joinery. And this art form is very popular around the world. And to use this art form, they say there's 5 steps. And I'd like to point out these 5 steps and want you to start thinking about the broken pieces in your life and how you handle them, the things that we called scars earlier. But how can we join these broken pieces to have them be a beautiful art form by using golden joinery? Okay, so the first step, they say, is you gather your supplies. So besides your broken pottery, you need to get additional items, and we'll go through those items in this podcast. And so I think the first thing in gathering your supplies, if we're working on those broken pieces in our life, we need to be intentional about our studio. And maybe our studio is our journal or our quiet place or that place we go to meditate or contemplate. So we need to gather ourselves up whenever we're dealing with the brokenness in our past and how we're going to mend that brokenness. The second thing they say is you need to sand. And that means you need to just sort of lightly sand around the broken pieces to make sure that you're smoothing off any sharp edges. And what's important to that is that we all, from the broken parts in our past, have sharp edges. It may be resentment, bitterness, the rough edges that are grating against other people, our friends and family, whenever we're around them or we see pictures of them or get a message from them. So the first thing to think about your broken pieces is to sand those rough edges so that they're not sharp, that they wound other people because they're there and something reminds us of the brokenness, and then we get bitterness or we get anger or resentment or we get aggressive. So the first thing we need to do is sand off those edges. Then we need to have our glue. And the glue is necessary to bind the broken pieces back together. And the reality is, too many of us, when we deal with our brokenness, process it quickly and then ignore it. And we can't just ignore these pieces, because as long as the pieces are there, we're not whole. And when we go for holistic healing or a holistic approach to our recovery, we really need to have sanded the rough edges, the sharp edges, and have the right glue to join them back together, because those broken pieces of our past are still part of who we are in the present. Then what they do in Kintsugi is, after they glue the pieces together, they apply the gold powder. And this is what brings out the beauty in it. They don't just leave the clear lines there from clear epoxy or glue. They put gold powder over it, so all people see in this broken pottery that's been put together are these gold shining veins, so to speak. So I think we have to think about what it would our gold powder be as we work on our brokenness. Well, for me, it's things like love, kindness, understanding, acceptance. How is our attitude? What gold and powder could be in our attitude? Well, I think, loving, comfort, tenderness, kindness, peace, patience, all of those things can be our gold powder. Well, after they apply the gold powder, they wait to make sure it sets up properly. And then when it's done, they wash the whole object. So I think what's important as we go through our healing, as we go through repairing our broken pieces and becoming whole again, we can't skip that step either, where we rest after we do the hard work of processing things. We rest after we've done this sanding and gluing and putting on the gold. And then we wash, we approach this new object that we've become from a clean approach. We wash any dirt or residue that may be clinging fast to us. Even though we've taken care of the sharp parts, there can still be this, just this negative aspects that hang on to us. So we need to wash away these negative aspects of any pain that we still harbor, because those negative aspects, that dirt, would actually tarnish the gold over time. And then it's important, and all of the Japanese artists who work in this medium say that the final step is really to admire your handiwork, to really look at the beautiful creation that they have made out of brokenness. And I think we need to do that too. We need to sit back and be proud of what we've come through. Be proud of the hard work we put in to push through and find healing and find wholeness again. We can't just say, okay, I did it, and then put it on a shelf, so to speak, and ignore it. Well, the neat thing about the Japanese culture involving Kintsugi is that it also has a spiritual meaning. And so as I researched this, the spiritual meaning really sort of aligns with the spiritual interpretations of broken glass or broken pottery as a representation of a broken relationship. And so we can look at that area of our brokenness ourselves. And that is, does it have a spiritual component because of broken relationships? And these can be broken relationships in our faith walk or broken relationships in our human relations, whatever it might be. And if we go back to this idea of broken glass, I like a quote from a song by Leonard Cohen called Anthem, where he said, "There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." So what's neat to me, as you think of having this gold powder on all the pieces you put together at where they're joined, it's that aspect of this is where light can come in. And I think part of our healing process is embracing what light is come into our spiritual journey, what light has come into our walk, what light has come into us in the form of transformation as we've transformed from this broken man or woman to this whole healed man or woman who's gone through a sort of recovery process of Kintsugi. Then the second aspect of the spiritual meaning in the Japanese is that this Kintsugi art embodies the idea that embracing flaws, imperfections, and scars can really result in something more beautiful and more valuable than it was before it was broken. You got that? So for those of you who are still broken or have gone through brokenness in your past, you, when put together again, when healed and whole, are more beautiful and more valuable than you ever were before. And this reminds me of a quote by Penny Reid, who said, "A break is something to remember, something of value, a way to make the piece more beautiful, rather than something to disguise." The Japanese use gold, not invisible superglue, because mistakes shouldn't be considered ugly. You got that? So I think the message for me in that is stop beating yourself up about mistakes that you made in the past that led to the brokenness, and try to find the beauty in the rebirth of healing and wholeness. And the last aspect for the Japanese is that every break is unique. And instead of trying to repair the item to be exactly what it was when it was new, they take this aspect that they've been doing for 400 or 500 years in their art to highlight the scars as the key part of the design. And this reminds me of a quote by Justin Whitmell Early, who said, "The scars are the design. Your attention is drawn to the cracks and how they are mended. This is what you're supposed to see. The beauty is in the brokenness." So as we close this episode, I think it's important to say, can you see the beauty in the brokenness, the beauty in your own flaws and imperfections? And in this process of repairing the things that have been broken in you, can you focus on getting in your studio, your Kintsugi studio, so to speak, and create something more unique, more beautiful, and more resilient than you were before? Thanks for listening to this episode. If this stirred something in you and you want to reach out, you can contact me by messaging me on the links in whatever platform you're listening to. Or you can send me a message on my website, www.fromatod.org, or by email at davidfromatod@gmail.com. Tune in Monday for our next episode, and as always, stay safe and stay resilient.